Almost everyone who buys games via Steam has had their own experience with early access. With over 200 games being in early access and Valve promoting early access games on a daily basis on their Steam front page, it is hard to miss new early access releases. It's been 1.5 years since the inception of early access, and I thought it was a good time to get some interesting facts and figures on Valve's innovative publishing arrangement. Now, what exactly did I research? First, I compiled a list of all the games that are currently in early access. Then, I gathered some info on the developer. Finally, I read through the most recent Steam reviews for every game, marking down every positive or negative comment directed toward the developer. For a comment to be positive, it had to include one of the following: a mention of regular updates, a mention of the willingness of the developer to listen to critique, a mention of open communication from the side of the developer, or the developer took time to answer or help out a customer in a polite way. For a comment to be negative, it had to include one of these: a mention of no updates in a long time, a mention of censorship happening, a mention of the game being dead, or a developer giving an answer to a review in an impolite way. With this, I wanted to give an overview of the general opinion the gaming audience has on early access and the developers involved in it. Since the products on sale are all sold as incomplete, trust should be the main foundation of early access, and should the customers feel they are being neglected or duped, early access wouldn't be able to survive much longer. The following research was compiled through the last week of December 2014, so some numbers may have already been changed. I also have to mention that Steam doesn't have the option to see all games that have been in and out of early access, only the ones that are currently still part of the whole process. However, these numbers should still give you a general idea of the scope of early access. So let's see what I found out. There are currently 266 games on early access. 75% of them are the developer's first attempt at selling something via Steam. Of those titles, 66% were the developer's very first attempt at a game as a team. At least that is my assumption, because of all the developers involved, 90 of them don't have proper representation. By that I mean a website dedicated to the company, including the address as well as another way to communicate with the developer, be it by phone or email. That also means that those developers had no way to demonstrate their abilities and prior projects to their customers. Facebook or Twitter accounts weren't regarded as proper representation. The month with the most releases was July 2014, when 14% of all titles currently in early access were introduced, with a close second of September 2014, when 13% were introduced. The least amount of releases came out in July 2013 as well as May 2013, with both only having a single release. An incredible 80% of all early access titles are developed and published by the same company, which to me was unexpected. The total amount of work put into all early access games is as much as 119 years of constant development. This is of course a bit off, since some of the games were already in development way before early access came to be. Also, 5% of the games don't even feature an official release date, so there's that. And what I personally found interesting is that 3% of these games aren't even available yet. Still, they're featured as part of early access. Now let's take a closer look at the review section. There are a total of 494,195 reviews spread out all over early access titles. Only 4% of all the games, however, have more than 10,000 reviews, led by Unturned with a whopping 83,222, only topped by DayZ with a total of 87,470. Now these 494,195 reviews are mostly positive, 88% of them to be exact, which may sound surprising considering the way people usually behave on the internet. It is very rare for a game to have more negative than positive reviews. Let's get a bit more specific here. Let's take a look at the gamer's view regarding the developers. Surprisingly enough, people barely mentioned them in their reviews. Most of the reviews focused on gameplay elements. Very few saw the developers as the artists or constructors of the game. Even less people bothered talking about their opinion on the developers. Only 194 of the most current reviews talk about the developers' positive or negative attitude towards their customers. In these 194 reviews, we have comments about censorship, games being dead, and mostly about 28% lamenting the lack of regular updates and lack of communication. This sounds horrible, but luckily there's still light at the end of the tunnel, because on the other hand, we have 64% of the people speaking positively of the developers, mostly praising their willingness to listen to the community, the constant stream of updates, and general helpfulness toward the community. I have to admit, I went into this expecting much more negativity, much more hate, and tons of negative experiences. What I found was lots of horrible grammar, frustration with Steam and game developers, but also lots of hope and potential, lots of already fleshed out games, and a general positive attitude towards the whole world of early access. Now, does this mean that early access is perfect the way it is? Far from it. No customer should fear their game of choice to be dead, never should there be talk of censorship and developers deleting criticism directed at them. And Valve should push the developers to show full disclosure regarding the company itself. It can't be that some companies can only be contacted via one single email address, or even worse, only via Twitter or Facebook. And early access still needs a proper distinction between planned and available features found in a game. But as long as the customer is happy, Valve might not feel enough pressure to change something about their innovative but still flawed early access system. Now, of course I'm not a scientist, I try to be as unbiased as possible, but still I may have overlooked negative or positive comments, and I apologize in advance for any mistakes made. I still hope that you found this useful, or at least interesting, and that you find some time today to go and play some video games. See you guys next time!